Brenda Sue Sica was a 43-year-old from Huntsville, Alabama. She was a bartender and military vet. On July 1st, 2017, Brenda moved out of an apartment that had been paid for by her married boyfriend. Despite a forthcoming email where Brenda said she was in Wyoming, there is no proof of this. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Dentzel, and this is Unfound. I'm 51 years old, and I have never owned a piece of property. Not a house, not a yard, not even a blade of grass or pebble of pavement. I think I'm in a very small percentage of people at my age who have had the means and chance to buy a place to live, but haven't. Why is this? I think there are a couple of reasons. Number one, I grew up in a house that was certainly unique. But the cities in which I've lived, every home that is in my price range looks like every other one. And number two, I like the flexibility of being able to move anytime I want. I'm willing to take a bit of a financial hit to know the very second a place starts to turn me off, for whatever reason, I can leave pretty quickly and fairly easily. That's my kind of peace of mind. However, were I to hit Powerball or Mega Millions, which are in crazy territory right now, I'm sure I could find a mansion with high fences that would suit my tastes. Well, in the disappearance of Brenda Sica, she had never owned a home either, going from one rental to the next. Then Brenda was gone, and the resolution to her case could be to figure out what happened at the apartment. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Lionez's website, charleyproject.org. Brenda Sica was a naturally intelligent, outgoing, and beautiful girl. She also played a vital role as big sis to her younger siblings. After high school, Brenda went to the Air Force and served from January 1992 to September 1993. Brenda then, over the next several years, got her degree and was this close to getting her master's. Then things changed. Due to her work as a bartender, Brenda got around the wrong people. She became more isolated and developed a drug addiction. Brenda thought a change in atmosphere might help her, so she moved from Florida to Alabama. Yet the same pattern continued. So in early July 2017, Brenda decided she was moving out of the Huntsville, Alabama apartment where she lived. She had been in it for 6 months. Brenda's married boyfriend, Jim, had found it for her and paid the rent. She didn't say where she was going. Jim says he wished her well and gave her $5,000 to go wherever she wanted. Brenda was never seen again. However, when her family finally noticed she was missing later in July, an email exchange started in which Brenda claimed she found a new boyfriend and that she was in Wyoming. However, to this day, there is no proof of that. The email stopped toward the end of August 2017. The circumstances of Brenda's disappearance could be classified as a hybrid type of case. We have signs of a drug issue, a relationship issue, and possibly a walk-off issue altogether. Meaning, finding a logical theory could be harder than usual. But please try to answer these 3 questions as you listen to the interview. Number 1, if the emails were truly from Brenda, why did they originate from an email address that no one had seen before? Number 2, after 4 years, why is it still unclear who helped Brenda move out, since she had furniture, including a cherished large bookcase? And number 3, why is it there is no internet database showing Brenda or Jim having ever been connected to the apartment in Huntsville, Alabama? Brenda's family is open to possibilities regarding her disappearance, but foul play is foremost in their minds. The guest for this episode is Brenda's sister, Charley Project. Unfound news. Why, yes, the meeting with the people in Greeley, Colorado did happen on September 7th. Thank you for asking. However, although they didn't say I couldn't say anything about the discussion, I'm going to play it safe and just keep quiet for now. Will I be going there to testify for Steve Pankey's trial? I think there's a possibility. Next, why yes, some kooks did come out of the woodwork and send me some screeds regarding Israel Keys and the 5th anniversary episode. Thank you for asking. These people cannot be satisfied. Even when I try to give their side of the argument a fair shake, they criticize me. I guess that will be the end of that. Finally, why yes, I did enjoy my show with Dr. Telesco last Thursday, September 2nd. Thank you for asking. But the big thing that may come out of it is one of Unfound's unsolved disappearances may get new attention just from me appearing on Grace's show. I love that kind of synergy. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Audible, Podomatic, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Deezer, and YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us for the Unfound Live Show. All of you can talk with me, and I can answer your questions. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You can also contribute at PayPal, paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. I also need to give a huge shout out to all the people who have monetarily contributed using Super Chat during the live show on Wednesday nights. Thank you for watching, and thank you for donating. The email address, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Merchandise, the books at amazon.com in both ebook and print form. Yes, you know it. Do not forget the reviews. Shirts at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com, or you can track down my assistant Heather in the Facebook group. Playing cards at makeplayingcards.com/sell/Unfound Podcast. The website, theunfoundpodcast.com. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the sister of Brenda Sica, Charley Project. Charley, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And the listeners should know, Charley and I might have set a record for as much as we've talked before this interview, back and forth with a lot of messenger messages and a lot of things that, of course, are going to come up in this interview. So, Charley, even though we've never met in person, I feel like I know you very, very well already. So yes. I hope we can continue this correspondence, of course, until Brenda is found.
Yes,
You're welcome. Let's start here. Of course, you are Brenda's sister. How many siblings do you have? Where do you fall in the line compared to Brenda? Older sister, younger sister? Let's just start with that.
Okay. Well, Brenda, I'll first start off by saying me and Brenda were both adopted.
Huh.
Brenda was adopted at 3 months. And then when our biological mother had me, then our mother adopted me. So it was just me and Brenda from New Jersey, and my mom met my stepfather, and they had a son, so I do have a brother also. So it was just me, Brenda, and my brother.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Carrie, but I am adopted as well. So that's always interesting when somebody that comes up during an interview. Well, that's very interesting. We should have probably talked about this before, but that's very interesting. So then Brenda is your older sister then? Older.
Yes.
Okay, older sister by how many months, years?
By about 18 months.
18 months. Okay.
Yes.
So kind of close, not far away, but it's pretty close. And how was your family, the three of you, brother and two sisters? How was she as an older sister? How would you explain all that, maybe as youngsters into your teen years?
Well, me and Brenda were very close, closer in age than our brother. I'm actually 8 years older than him.
Okay.
So, growing up, naturally me and Brenda were more close, and we went to the same school, just a grade or two behind her. We went to the same high school. We shared a room together. We had the same friends together.
Yeah.
We did a lot of things together. We had our, sister fights often.
Right.
Because Brenda was, because she was older, she always wanted to be in charge, or, thought that she knew what was best all the time. So, we had our fights, but, that was
everybody does, right? All siblings do, right? Of course. Would you say that yourself and Brenda, like personality-wise and social style, are the same, different?
Well, personality-wise, as far as certain interests, yes. As we were younger, but lifestyles as we got older, no.
Yeah, it's changed. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But just in your kid years, both of you outgoing, both of you maybe introverted. Both same things, or you just different?
No, as teenagers, we both kind of enjoyed the same things. We were, just your typical American, sisters, just growing up in the same, in the same era, the 80s, the early 90s. We, like I said, we would do things together on the weekends. If we would go to the movies or wherever we would go, we would be together. Whether it was with my friends, her friends, but we, basically had the same friends.
Okay. And being that she was 18 months older than you, so was she 2 grades ahead of you? Like when she was a senior, you were in 10th grade?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's move on to this. Let's just talk about Brenda exclusively. What were some of the things that she was into as a teenager, maybe that made her unique? Was education, hobbies, things like that?
Well, as a teenager, like in her high school years, Brenda was, always did very good in school. She was always on the honor roll. She liked to read a lot. She was very interested in history, books, and, even back then, politics. She liked to watch Jeopardy, trivia. Brenda was very intelligent, very book smart, never really had to study, for tests. Brenda was just very smart in school. I never had to struggle. Versus me, I had to study, just to get a B. She didn't even have to really study. Brenda, everything just kind of book smart came very natural to her. So she always did very good in school. she never really got in trouble as a teenager. You know, she liked the typical things, going to the movies, water parks. She liked music.
Yeah.
Concerts, you know, things like that.
Yeah. I actually had seen, I think it's on the Charley Project or something, that she could be seen usually maybe wearing a concert shirt, and it even picks out such as Metallica or Iron Maiden, which of course caught my eye because I'm a big fan of both of those
Yes.
bands. Is that how you remember her as well?
Yes. Yes.
Huh.
She
Okay.
liked those groups. Those were her favorite.
Uh-huh.
She, you know, she somehow would always get tickets to go to concerts. Um,
Hmm.
and, you know, she always liked to get, you know, collect or have the T-shirts of the different rock
Yeah,
bands that
me
she liked.
too.
She had a lot of them.
Me too. Me too. All
Yeah.
right, that's interesting. I think that's the first time this has ever come up on an episode of Unfound talking about concerts and concert shirts. So
Yes.
that's something surely that I can relate to. Interesting. Okay, how about relationships, boyfriends, anyone like that? You know, in high school, was she popular that way, or she kind of stay away from that, or what would you say?
Yeah, well, in high school, I mean, you know, she had, you know, different boyfriends, you know, here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not too many.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, the thing about Brenda, though, if she had a boyfriend and he did something she didn't like, she was very quick to cut him off and, you know,
Dump
break it
them.
off with them and not think twice about it.
Yeah,
She
dump
wasn't
them.
the type to sit there and, you know, cry and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that type of thing. She kind of just moved on. She didn't really have tolerance for, um, you know, anybody doing her wrong or, you know,
Right.
cheating on her or being seen with another girl. She was very quick just to cut it off.
No on again, off again relationships for Brenda.
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay. So, what did she do after high school? Of course, I have here in my notes and in the outline for this interview that she served in the military. When did she do that? How do you think she came to that decision? Do you remember that?
I was trying to actually think about that the other day. I was looking at her Air Force military picture.
Mm-hmm.
She served in the Air Force of January of 1992 to September of 1993, and I'm trying to actually to remember how she was interested, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in serving in the military, and then you know it came to me that she always had an interest with history, like
Mm-hmm.
you know the past wars, and
Yeah.
she was all into that. She would watch movies and books and try to talk to me about it, which at the time I was never interested and I didn't understand it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what started, you know, like as soon as she was able to go, that's what
Yeah.
she wanted to do because of
Okay.
her, you know, passion for reading books about it and just, you know, being interested in history.
Yeah. Do you think your parents were surprised about that? I mean, did they support that? How do you remember it?
Um, yeah, I remember them supporting it. You know, she didn't want to go to college,
Mm.
so, you know, right
Hmm.
away she knew that's what she wanted to do. So, you know, I
Okay.
remember they were all for it. I actually remember driving her to drop her off, um, you know, to leave for the military.
Yeah.
I have a memory of that. Um, I think I
Uh,
was 16 at the time, and
okay.
she was 18. Yeah.
Okay. And do you know, was she ever overseas or did she just stay in the United States? What is Air Force, I guess, base, I guess, or yeah.
Yes, she
Yeah.
was at an Air Force base in Montana,
Wow.
and that's where she was stationed at
Okay.
for that short period of time.
Okay. Now, you did say that there was January of 92 to September of 93. I've never been in the military. My father was, but that sounds like a shorter stint than usual. I guess me as a layperson thinks, somebody goes into the military. I guess the shortest time is like 2 years unless something, happens. Of course, that wasn't quite 2 years. Do you know why that was? Any idea why it might have been
Um,
shorter than maybe most people would think?
I don't really remember exactly what happened. I know that Brenda's job in the Air Force at that time was
Mm,
inspecting parachutes, and she got out of the military with an honorable discharge.
okay.
Um, I don't remember exactly what happened. Something happened between her and her instructor.
Huh.
and she decided to leave.
Okay. So she got out. It was an honorable discharge, though. It wasn't
Yes.
something like she committed a crime or something. Of course, then it would be
No.
dishonorable.
Right.
Okay. So she got out there of it in September of '93. And what did she do from then? What did she do for work? I'm guessing maybe she didn't plan to get out of the military that quickly, if that's what happened. Maybe it sounds like a sudden spur of the moment thing. What did she do for the rest of the '90s?
Well, after she got out of the military, she got a job as a bartender. She started bartending just at like different places, different, little bars or different clubs that they had, going on at that time in the 90s. She was a bartender for a long time. So we're talking from 93 to, I want to say, probably like 2003. I mean, I know it
Wow.
was well over 10, 12,
Okay.
13 years. She was a bartender. She was at this one bar for probably about 8 years.
Huh.
And she was working as a bartender, and then she started going to college to pursue a degree in psychology.
Okay. And how was she doing? Your opinion? How was she doing during the rest of the '90s? Did she get? We already brought up relationships in high school. Did she meet any guys that she was dating or had a relationship or living with in the '90s, or what was going on there?
Yeah, Brenda, to be honest, she had a lot of different boyfriends.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest and tell you that.
Okay.
She just, like I said, she's just always been the type, she'll go after a guy, everything's going good, and then as soon as something happens, she pulls away and she's done, and then she's on to the next one.
Okay.
So she's had several boyfriends in her, in her past.
Okay. And I don't think anybody would be surprised by that. If she's a bartender, that's who you're going to mainly meet, men, right?
Right.
That's just part of the job, being nice to them, and sometimes that turns
Exactly.
into something more. And I'm certainly not going to judge that. That's totally fine. And did she end up ever? I know this came up, but I'll ask you anyway. Did she ever have any children? We have to remember she was in her 40s when she went missing. Any children?
No, she never had children. She didn't
Okay.
think she could. She
Huh.
just, I think she just was never really with someone long enough, maybe,
Hmm.
to try. And I just think her lifestyle at the time, being a bartender,
Yeah.
going to college, I just don't think it was in her mind to do that.
Right. Okay.
She never really talked about wanting to have kids.
Hmm.
So I just think as the years progressed, she was just
Yeah.
busy with her, with working
Doing.
and going to school.
Okay. And when you say she was bartending, would this have been back in your area where your family was, where you were?
Yes.
And where would this be?
The name of the place?
Yeah, this you don't have to get specific. What state would this be?
Oh, in Florida,
In
Davie,
Florida.
Florida.
All right, Davie, Florida. Okay, great. All right, and of course everybody knows I live in Florida now. All right, so military service, gets out, bartending for quite a long time into the 2000s at the same place for several years, and after that she just maybe moved to another place, needed a change of pace there, going somewhere else, or what?
Um, well, I mean, she was, bartending here.
Mm-hmm.
She had an apartment. She would move, a few times, maybe, once every 2 years. And then she moved, her last time she moved, it was to be closer to the college she was going to.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. She was going to school for what years? How did that go?
Well, she was going to college at Nova University. She graduated with her bachelor's. She was 6 months away from getting her master's, but that's when, things just started to come down, fall apart for her.
And what year do you think this was about?
I'm sorry, what year?
Yeah, what year do you think she was 6 months
Um,
away from her master's? You said things started to fall apart. Approximately what year would that have been? Just to put this in a timeline.
Probably about, I want to say 2002.
Okay. All right. So 2002, 6 months to go, and something happens. Of course, we're still like about 15 years before she went missing. Um, when you say things started to fall apart, being that you brought it up, maybe we can talk about it right now. What does that mean?
Well, I think she just started neglecting school because, she was working a lot. She was taking, more shifts, at the bar. And if she wasn't taking shifts, when she would get off, she would sit down and hang out and start drinking. And, after the drinking, came the drugs. And at that time, I just remember watching her kind of lose everything.
Wow.
At that moment, as far as, not going to school, losing, her car, or lending somebody her car that crashed her car, and then, just losing like things, like valuables that she had just from maybe people that she was hanging out with. I just remember during that time, that's when things just, to me, I just noticed a big change in her. Like she wasn't like the upbeat, high energy person that she was working, going to college. She just started, it was more about hanging out with the people at the bar at this point.
Did you, of course, once again, we're still several years before she went missing, but back at that time, did you have a talk with her? Did anybody else that, she was close to have a talk with her? Hey, Brenda, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to talk to her. I mean, at this time now here, I'm married. I have 2 young kids at the time. So I would try to talk to her. I would try to tell her, that she needs to stop drinking and, and focus on what she needs to do. I didn't like to see her in that condition. And then again, at that time, I was a little naive to what she was doing because I don't do drugs. I didn't do them. So I didn't really know like what was wrong with her,
right.
Until like after, then I started to find out what she was doing just from, looking at her and putting, 2 and 2 together. And that's also the time she started, having depression issues. She was, depressed. She would get depressed a lot. She had anxiety a lot. And I think that's what led to, the drinking and the drugs.
Yeah. Can you remember specifically now? And once again, I think the listeners understand you have your own life to live. It's not your job to look after Brenda. It's nobody's job to look after Brenda. She would be in her late 20s, early 30s. I mean, she has to, at some point, have to take care of herself. But do you remember the first time that you thought, man, something is just not right here? Is it a particular example maybe that comes to mind? You saw her, or at a family gathering or something that was like, oh boy, anything that pops up.
Yes, I do remember her coming over to my house. My kids at this time were young. They were like 8, 12. And I remember my grandmother was here, and I told her to come over to eat dinner with us. And I remember we were eating dinner, and she kind of like fell asleep at the table.
Oh my.
Like she kind of like put her head down and like fell asleep. And at that point, I just remember being mad because my kids were looking at her, looking at me.
Yeah.
My grandmother's there, so I remember getting into an argument with her and telling her, you can't come to my house like this in front of my kids. But at the time I didn't really know like exactly what she was doing.
Yeah.
Because she can go from high to low at any time.
Very fast.
Because remember during this time, she had her depression, she suffered from anxiety, but she also had her master's in psychology. So, it kind of messed with her mind a little bit that she kind of knew, what her issues were.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I think it kind of drove her crazy in a way. And that's what led to more drugs and alcohol, was just her depression. Because I think if she was never depressed, I don't think she would have turned down that road. I think she would have finished school and, would have done what she wanted to do, which is help people. She just didn't want to help herself, but she wanted to help everybody else.
Okay. Okay. So how did this progress? Of course, we're talking 2002, 2003. She's having these problems. And How did it progress over the next 15 years? How did she manage this? Did she ever try to go to rehab? Did she have any, I just have to ask, any stints in jail because of any of this? What can you talk about all of that?
Well, I mean, it just progressed after that. She was living by herself, or she had a roommate. She was, still working at the bar. Like I said, here I am, married. I have 2 kids. I'm working. So I didn't see her a lot during those years, probably from 2000, I think I said 2003, and then 2010, I had my daughter. And after that is when, things got, to be a little bit worse.
Even worse. Even worse.
Yeah. But basically during that time, she was just still working and just, hanging out and, just doing what she was doing, which I didn't always know what she was doing.
Right. Of course, like I said, this is a very common topic when we have siblings of missing people that, maybe parents, it's a little different when we have mothers or fathers on the program, but with siblings, you have your own lives. You have your own kids. Your concern is theirs first. Their welfare first, of course. And you'd like to help Brenda out maybe more than you could, but you have, greater responsibilities. Totally understandable. Right. But I do have to ask, what were your parents saying about all this? How were they reacting to this as they saw Brenda kind of go downhill? A young woman who, like you said, very intelligent, didn't have to study, went to the military, etc.
Well, at this point, when things started to get bad with Brenda, as far as her depression, we started to see her getting more depressed. And then she, my mom and dad, they felt bad, and they told her to come live with us. We want to help you.
Yeah.
My mom wanted to help her. She wanted to get her into a rehab. She wanted to get her on her right medicine. So during that time, my sister was living with my parents, 2010.
Okay.
And then she, because I know you had just asked me if she ever been to jail.
Yeah.
During this time of her being depressed and getting into drugs, she actually got caught with some pills that she was just doing a favor for somebody so she can, they would give her some pills.
Yeah.
And long story short, they set it up, the dealer and her, and she actually ended up getting arrested and went to jail for about 4 months.
Wow.
Then she was released into a rehab after that because, they saw that she was a good person. She wasn't a criminal. She just had a depression and a drug problem, a drug habit at that time.
Okay.
So she did go to a rehab. It was a live-in facility. We were able to see her on the weekends. So she did the program. And then I have to say this, I do remember her getting out of the program and having to be on some type of probation or reporting that you found a job. Well, she had no car and she couldn't get a job besides bartending because when you have a record, nobody wants to hire you. So I remember that was a really hard time for her because, here she is trying to get herself back together and nobody will give her a chance. And that's when she just spiraled a little out of control as far as her depression, but back to what you're asking me, my parents tried to be supportive.
Yeah.
I mean, they did what they could do. They really did. They let her in, they took her to doctor's appointments. They put up with her coming home drunk. I mean, she kind of put them through a lot at one point,
Yeah.
Until it kind of got out of control. A little bit, and then my mom wasn't comfortable with her being there, just because she didn't want to help herself.
Right. These people with addictions, problems like this, they have to help themselves. It's no matter how many arms and hands are outstretched to them. If if they can't help themselves, then it's we've probably talked about this topic at least 50 times on disappearances, you know, and the think tank that I do, a very small group on Sunday evenings, this is a very common topic. So sure. So she's having all these issues, and she's ends up, of course, living by herself again. I guess after she, I guess, had to leave your parents' house. How did she? Of course, we have to remember she disappeared from Huntsville, Alabama, whereas a lot of this is taking place in Florida. How did she find her way to Huntsville, Alabama?
Okay, well, after, she got out of, the little program or whatever, and she just felt like, I remember her telling me, I just can't be in Florida anymore. I can't be around these people. I'm trying to get clean. I don't want to do drugs anymore. I need a new start.
Okay.
So that's when she basically, just left, and she's decided, I'm just going to go to Alabama. I believe she did have a friend out there somewhere. I don't really remember the details of it. I just know that she left. And that was 2011.
Okay.
I want to say 2012, 2011, I think, towards the middle of 2011. And she took off to Alabama. And, that's where she, landed there, got a job as a bartender, stayed with a couple friends. I know that she had met some guy up there, and I think they went to the courthouse and got married.
Wow.
However, that didn't last because, like I said, Brenda doesn't put up with, things from men. She didn't, she left him. She didn't want anything to do with him. And from there, she just, I guess, had her own little place, and then she just started bartending and just meeting different people.
And you had told me that, of course, we're going to get into this, the final apartment complex here eventually, but you'd told me that she was living in this little place, like, behind a gas station or something. Like,
yes.
You made it sound very simple. This, had the bare minimum of things.
Right.
Right? That's where she was living before.
Yeah, I believe it might have been the town called, not really familiar with towns in Alabama, but I think it was called Altoona.
Huh.
And all I remember is she gave us the address, and it's just, I don't know if you've ever been out to the country, or anybody that listens knows, like, in the country they have like these long, dirt roads, dark roads, nothing but trees, and, there's really no, life existence. You don't really see too many cars. But anyhow, she was living in this little, like, I want to call it like a little efficiency. But if you pass it, it was like an old, like, beat up gas station. And when I pulled up there, me and my mom, I remember saying, we're in the wrong place. Like, she doesn't live here. So when we get out of the car and we went to the back, and there it was like a door, and it was like a little efficiency that she was staying in. But you would never know that anybody lived there.
Oh my.
If you were just driving by, it just looked like what you see on the movies, like an old, beat up gas station with the Pepsi machine.
Yeah. Yes.
That kind of thing. So that's where she was staying at that time. And I did not expect to see her living in a place like that. I mean, the outside was bad, but, her little place inside, she had a little kitchen, a bathroom, a little room, her dog, but I didn't even think that anybody lived there.
Wow. And what Lear, do you think this was that you went up there to see her with your mother? Just a guess.
This was in 2016.
All right, so we're getting a lot closer to the disappearance date. Okay. Now, you'd also told me that even though that she was working up there, at some point she had quit her jobs and was not working, and in fact was not working at the time of her disappearance. Is that how you understand it?
Yes. Okay. Right. She, at first when she was up there, she was working at two bars. Well, actually a bar, and then she was working at a gentleman's club.
Okay.
This is when she was living in that area, in Altoona. She was living there, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you before. I think I did. Then she was renting a room out of a trailer from some men that came into the bar that she worked at.
Okay.
So this was actually after the little efficiency.
Oh, this was after the little efficiency. All right. So
right.
She went from there to renting out this trailer, and then to the final place.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. But she quit these jobs at some point before her disappearance?
Yes. Well, yeah. Where she was about, I want to say, maybe an hour from Huntsville.
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't have a car.
Yeah.
So she didn't have any, means of transportation to get to work. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she quit both places she was working at.
Okay. Now, at some point, though, and this is going to take us directly into the disappearance itself, I guess when she was working at one of these places before she quit these jobs, and we're only going to be using his first name for the purposes of this interview, but I do know his last name, and Carrie and I have talked about him extensively, but we're going to only talk about him with his first name and only concerning his connection to Brenda. That at some point while she was working in one of these bars, Jim came in. And how do you understand them meeting? What do you remember at the time?
Well, I remember she, called me and she was all excited, and she was telling me that she had met this guy, that he would come into her job after, he would leave work. He had to pass the place that she was working, and he, every night he just, he would come in. So, I guess after some time, maybe like a week or so, to her, he became like a regular. He kept coming in every night, sitting at the bar and talking to her.
Okay.
So she was, I do remember her calling me, telling me she was excited. She met this guy, they're hitting it off, et cetera, et cetera. Just telling me for a while, like he would just come in, have a few beers and leave.
Okay, so there was something about him in particular that caught her attention, and is it possibly because, of course, she was military and he was military too?
Yes.
It might have been the connection there. Maybe he found out that she had been in the Air Force, he was in the military, and then that's something, of course, they could talk about.
Right. All right. That's what she liked about him. That, the fact that he would come in with his, uniform, and Brenda always had respect for people in the military, and I think that's what attracted,
Okay.
I think that's what the attraction was.
At any time in these conversations, did Brenda ever tell you that he was married, or did you find that out after?
No, she did tell me that he was married.
Okay.
Brenda was always upfront and honest. That's just her personality.
Okay.
She's very blunt, very honest.
Okay, and that did not bother her? How did she explain that? I mean, how did you react to that when she told you, and what did she have to say about that particular topic?
Well, when she told me, I mean, I just I didn't really agree with it, just for the simple fact that, I mean, I'm married and I have kids, and I wouldn't want my husband to be out there doing,
Of course, it sounds like trouble. Right. Sounds like, love triangle, which can lead to problems, of course.
Exactly. So, she would just say, I know he's married, but, they're getting a divorce and he's not happy. And, she's like, I'm not saying, I'm going to marry him or anything. That was kind of her input on it. Like, there's no harm done. He's the one that's stepping out on her.
Uh-huh.
I'm just going along with the ride.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
So she knew. Obviously, he told her. She tells you, and they have this, I guess, thing going on. And once again, to your knowledge, what Brenda told you, he had said that, I'm going to be leaving my wife. I'm going to be divorcing her, and I guess maybe leading Brenda to believe that maybe they were going to be a couple.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, at some point, though, and maybe even to further this, your understanding is that he actually got a place for her. Of course, she's living in this place that looked like a rundown gas station, and then she's living in this trailer with a couple guys. And I guess the way we understand it, although we're going to get into the particulars of this later, that he found a place for her in Huntsville.
Yes.
Okay, and where is this place? Your understanding of what the address is, the apartment complex, what is it?
It's a apartment complex in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, the Overlook on Sparkman Drive.
Okay, and in fact, you even have the apartment number. Maybe you can just tell the listeners what you believe the apartment number was. It's 26E.
Right.
Yeah, right? Is it apartment
Yes.
26E? Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. Didn't mean to spring that on you like that. Okay, but she was, your understanding is that he decided to move her into this place in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, apartment 26E at the apartment complex you just mentioned. And when do you remember this happening? Was this 2016? Was this 2017? What do you remember about it? The best you can do.
I want to say that it was 2017.
Okay.
It was, yes, because I remember it was after Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Yes, so it was right around the beginning of 2017.
All
I want to
right.
say either January or February.
Okay, and we have to remember that she went missing in July, so she was in this place 6 months, let's say.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
While she was living there for those 6 months, and I think this is very, very important, did anybody you trust, I know you were never there to physically on the premises in Huntsville, Alabama, but anybody you know that you trust ever go visit her at that apartment complex?
No.
No. Of course, letter writing isn't necessarily a thing in the 21st century anymore. But did anybody you trust, even yourself, ever get a letter from her, any correspondence from her, or anything like that, saying that she was at that particular address?
No, now that I think about it, no.
Okay.
Never.
But on the other hand, you did do some FaceTiming with her, you told me, and that
Yes.
she was at this place, and actually a couple of these times she actually showed you around the place.
Yes.
So like with
called me.
the camera.
Yeah, she had called me one night and she was excited because she had gotten some new, like a new end table or a coffee table. Mm-hmm. She just, she wanted to show me her place. It was something so much better than where she was.
It was a step up, quite a few steps up, right, from the gas station.
Yes. So she was so excited, and I remember sitting outside, and her, I was FaceTiming, and her, this is my living room, this is my kitchen, this is my bedroom, so I do remember her showing me everything in her apartment.
Okay, but you don't have that video today in 2021.
I know. Yeah, I wish I did.
Yeah, I wish you did too. It'd probably be interesting to look at it. Your understanding, being that she was showing you this place, and there was obviously furniture in it, was it pre-furnished? You said she got a table or something, or was that her furniture in that place?
Well, now that I think about it, it was her furniture. Because my sister, yes, she always had a bookshelf. Brenda loved books. She would read all the time, constantly. So she had, her favorite thing in the world was her bookshelf and her dog. So I remember her showing me her bookshelf. I did some new pieces of furniture that she got. But I did see a lot of her, of her things.
Okay, so once again, then your understanding, for example, I guess the alternative scenario, or I guess there are a couple alternative scenarios, and trust me, listeners, this is all going to be very important later, so just remember this. Of course, there's things like Aaron's Rent-A-Center, or something like that. You can rent furniture. People can do that. In fact, I almost did that in the place that I live now. I was looking at a different place that wasn't furnished, and I could have just rented the furniture, whereas where I live now, I actually rent, but it's actually people who own the place's furniture. So She could have been renting that furniture. Of course, maybe Jim could have got that furniture for her. But your understanding is it was actually Brenda's furniture.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Hmm.
And so when you would FaceTime with her, I guess, like I said, she was there for at least 6 months. Would you say that that was the best you had seen of her as far as her demeanor, her attitude, and everything? Those FaceTiming, showing you around her apartment, was that the best you'd seen her in years? Or
No.
what? No. She was still
No, it
troubled, you
was not.
think?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, then why
Yes.
don't you explain that a little bit before we move forward?
Um, she just, would call me excited to show me, the apartment. But on the other
Mm-hmm.
hand, she was also, said she was very lonely. She was very depressed.
Mm-hmm.
She was drinking a lot. She just wasn't happy, and I remember telling her, Brenda, why don't you, make any friends in the complex? And, she didn't have any friends. Or I would tell her, why don't you go take a walk outside, go walk your dog,
Yeah.
maybe try to have some interaction with people, because
Yeah.
she never told me. And it's funny that you asked me that, if I trust anybody that ever went over there.
Mm-hmm.
She never had anybody at her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
No, and now I'm thinking, and I remember telling her, you don't have friends, you don't go nowhere. Do you take a walk? You need to get out of the apartment. You're just sitting in there, just being depressed. So
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
was, yeah, wasn't. That was a very low point for her. Even
Okay.
though I was glad to have her out of the other place, but she was very lonely. And
Mm-hmm. And we have to remember, maybe this should be brought up. This guy Jim, who allegedly got this place for her and was paying for it. Once again, allegedly. He did not live in Huntsville. He did not actually live anywhere near there.
no, he did not.
No, he lived. We're not going to give the city away, but like an hour and a half away, as we've talked about. So he got her this place, but even he, she's his girlfriend. Even he's not close.
No, he wasn't. And I
Okay.
didn't realize the distance until,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of put it together.
Yeah, we started getting a little bit more into these details of addresses and locations and things like that, which once again the listeners are going to find out why this is all important very shortly. Okay, so your feeling in 2017, going into the summer of 2017, is that you were very worried about Brenda. Of course, she doesn't have a car, she doesn't have a job. It seems she has this guy who is, she's kind of a kept woman, but she spends all the time alone, not a lot of interaction, with anybody out there. So you were worried about her.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was very worried about her. Actually, at one point, I even told her, if you're so lonely, because that's when she was saying, I just don't want to be by myself. And, I hesitated for a while because, I was going through my own personal things at home. But I had told her, hey, look, just come down, just come stay with me.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about it. She sounded excited about it, and then she just said, no, I'm not going to go down there,
Mm-hmm.
And she
Okay.
never asked me again, or she never, brought it up again, or seemed interested. So I never brought it up again.
Okay. How many times would you say that you FaceTimed with her in the 6 months that she lived at that place?
Maybe
Approximately.
just a few times, honestly.
So maybe not even once a month.
No,
Okay.
no.
In those conversations, did Jim's name come up? Did you talk about him?
Um, yeah, she would talk about him
Okay.
from time to time. I know at one point, they were fighting a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
she didn't really want to tell me everything. I do remember her telling me one time that, he thinks I'm one of his soldiers, the way that he tries to talk to me.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Orders her around, I guess. He's the general
yes,
and she's the private.
right. I remember her telling me
Okay.
that. And
Okay.
she's like, he doesn't know that I'm just, I'm not one of his soldiers. Like, She would tell me. She would.
Okay.
It's kind of like she wanted to tell me, but then she didn't want to tell me too much.
Okay. Did you get any idea of how often Brenda and Jim would get together in any of those conversations? Did you ever get a feel for that?
Get together as far as him.
Yeah, coming over to the apartment, or them going out on a date, or them meeting halfway between where she's being kept, I guess, and where he lives. Anything like that? Did you ever get any idea on that?
Well, I know that he didn't come over and spend much time with her.
Mm-hmm.
I know what he did do was he would come over and he would just bring her alcohol, cigarettes, stay for a little bit, and then say he had to go.
Okay, that's what she told you.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What was she doing for money?
She didn't really have money. He basically, from what I understood.
Mm-hmm. Right. Once again, the listeners and I understand you weren't there. You only know what Brenda's told you, and maybe what you've learned since then. And we're going to get into that. But your understanding regarding her money situation, that's the best we can do here. What is your understanding of her money situation?
Just that he was providing for her. I don't think that he gave her like, here's, $40, go get your hair done type of thing. I just think that at that point, Brenda, like I said, she didn't have friends that visited her, now that I think about that.
Okay.
She didn't go anywhere. She didn't have a job. So the only things that she needed basically were food, her cigarettes, her alcohol. I remember her telling me that he would come over and bring her what she wanted. And those were the things that she wanted. She wasn't saying, hey, I want a new dress, or, hey, I want a new TV. As long as she had her dog, her, her cigarettes, her drink, and her movies, and her books, that's all she did. She just stayed in that apartment.
Okay. And your understanding, speaking of the dog, is that the Overlook Apartments, you're allowed to have dogs there? That's your understanding?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's move up now. So these are the things that are going on in Brenda's life, as best as we can tell, as best as Carrie can tell. Once again, she's not there. But this is the best we can do. And maybe I should ask you this. Do you remember the last time you spoke to Brenda before she went missing? Actually on the phone. We'll get into the emails and everything later. But it's on the phone, FaceTime, however you want to put it.
Yep, I do. I remember speaking to her. It was June 21st of 2017.
Okay.
She had called me because she apologized. She didn't call me on my birthday, which was the day before. But that was the last time I heard her voice, was June 21st.
Okay. So let's now move up to roughly July 1st, 2017. I just have to ask you a general question about that. How sure are you, once again, it's over 4 years later, that is actually the disappearance date? We'll get into the emails and everything later, but as far as her being in this apartment, her being there, seemingly, or how sure are you about July 1st of 2017?
Well, I mean,
you can just give it in a percentage, like 50% sure, 60%. What would you say?
Well, I mean, I would say, I don't know. I know that it was the first week of July.
Okay.
So I know that it had to have been before July 4th. So I want to say between July 1st and July 3rd.
Okay.
Is the day that she.
Okay.
All
right. And okay. And when did you, or maybe someone in your family, once again, somebody you trust, figure out that maybe she wasn't in those apartments anymore, that she was missing? How did that all come about?
Well, I mean, she talked about, now that I think about it back on Messenger through Facebook, that she wanted to move. She wanted to leave Alabama.
Okay.
So I'll say probably, I knew she was leaving just from her telling me that. When I had a conversation with Jim after the first week of July, I tried to call her phone and her phone was off. So I was just kind of like, oh, well, where are you? Where'd you go? How are you doing? I'm not even thinking 4 years later that I would be sitting here doing
All
this.
right, of course, nobody
But
does. I get it. Yeah.
so I kind of let it ride a little bit. And then when she wasn't answering me, of course, I didn't have a way to reach her. I didn't know who she's supposedly left with. The only means of communication of finding anything out about her was through Jim. So I reached out to him, and that's when he told us that, that she left. She told him she was leaving. That he had seen her the day before.
Okay.
That he, brought her some money. So she had money to leave.
Okay.
And so after he was telling me this, I'm like, well, I need to get a hold of her. She, her phone's off. How can I get a hold of her? So
let me just jump in here and ask you this, Carrie. How was it that you reached him? I mean, did Brenda give you his phone number? Did you just happen to have it, or how did you actually reach him? I mean, I know you knew his full name. Maybe that might have helped. And once again, we're not doing his full name in this interview, but how was it that you were able to contact him?
I believe it was through Facebook.
Okay, yeah, he does have a Facebook page. That he does to this day. He does.
Yes, it was through Messenger.
Okay.
Just, hey, have you heard Brenda? Her phone's off. I don't know where she went. What's going on? And I didn't, he told me that he would, try to get a hold of her, and that he would let me know.
Okay.
So at the time, I didn't really think much of it. I thought, okay, well, wherever she's going, maybe she's getting settled.
Yeah.
She'll call me. Maybe, it might be a couple weeks. Maybe she has to pay to get her phone turned back on. So I didn't really, think too much of it
right away
at that time.
Okay. When you did reach Jim, I guess a few days, once you couldn't reach her, did he ever say, of course we have to remember, she allegedly has all this furniture that she has. She would have needed help to move out. Even myself, as many times as I've moved in my life, I need help. Did he ever say, well, so-and-so helped her move out? Who helped her? Did Jim help her? Anything like that? Did he ever say anything like that? Did he have any idea? Did he bring it up? Anything? Who helped her? Did she rent a U-Haul? Anything like that?
He always claimed to this day too that he has no idea who helped her move out of there.
Okay.
He couldn't give me a name. I've tried to ask, think about friends that she might have had, maybe men friends, because Brenda always, had more men friends than women, so, and I told him, I'm like, well, think about, what maybe some customers in the bar. He claimed that he never knew who she moved with. Nobody saw her move. He has no idea. He didn't see a truck when he was there. He couldn't tell me anything.
Okay. But on the other hand, he said he was over there the day before she moved out.
Yes.
And he said that he gave her money, and we'll get into the amount of the money later, but he said that he actually gave her money.
Yes.
But on the other hand, he didn't know who helped her move out.
Right.
Okay. All right, so this is what's going on. Jim is telling you all these things. You're trying to reach her. She's not getting back to you. And then all of a sudden, let's talk about, and if I may ask right now, Carrie, these emails, I've gotten to see them. Would you allow me to post them so that the listeners can see them, to read them? Is that okay, or how do you feel about that?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so by the time the listeners hear our voices, I will have posted those emails so the listeners and viewers can see them for themselves. I'll post those in Facebook, on the Unfound Podcast website, and elsewhere. Okay, so out of nowhere, though, then you get these emails, or at least one email, and it was forwarded through Jim. Why don't you talk about that now? Of course, we're not going to read the emails word for word, but what dates were they? And we'll get into the email address. When did this all happen? How did it happen?
Okay, yeah. Because I believe that I was supposed to send you the email that Jim sent to Brenda's email.
Okay.
He sent an email to her on July 20th.
Okay.
Okay. And again, this, I actually just found it, and I'll forward it to you.
Thank you.
Yes, Jim basically told her, "Hey, look, Brenda, where are you? You need to reach out to your family. If you don't reach out to somebody, they're going to put a missing persons report." And he said, based on our last conversation, I don't think you want that. Now, I never honestly thought about what that could mean until today. But anyway, then she responded back to him on, I think it was July. It was 2 days after that.
Okay.
She emailed him back. And, basically just told him, I've only been gone a couple weeks. Why is, my family worried about me? And, she talked about a couple of things, which, I'll send to you.
Right.
And that was that. So he sent it to me, a copy of, their conversation.
Forwarded
and I thought, okay, great. All right, well, hey, I got an email. I guess I have to email her. So I emailed her on July 25th. And then she emailed me back on the 27th for the first time.
And this email address that, of course, everybody's going to see, I will just say it right here. It's bsica99@gmail.com. So it's bsica99@gmail.com. Had you ever seen that email address before?
No.
Okay. So she's missing, and then you're getting emails from her from an address that you had never seen before. I don't know how many times you and she emailed, but since she has gone missing, I'm sure other people have gotten to see these emails and that address. Has anybody ever come to you or said to you, "Oh yeah, I corresponded with Brenda at that email address"? Sure, that's yeah.
No.
Never?
No.
Okay.
Nobody has.
Okay. But you emailed back and forth, and once again, we're not going to read the emails word for word because I will just post them so people can read them for themselves. But you had a back and forth with her actually a couple times. Did it sound like Brenda to you?
Lena, I probably sat there and read these emails probably over 50 times in the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the conversation or things that she would say does sound like her.
Okay.
But then some things don't.
Okay.
So I've always kind of been on the fence with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more that I read them, the more that I start to notice different things. That I try to read them in her voice. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And something will tell me, like, wait a minute, that didn't sound like something she would say. So I've always kind of been suspicious about it.
Sure.
But at the time, I was just happy to hear from her,
Okay. Of course. And you had a couple correspondences back and forth, but then, and we're going to get into at least a few of the details a little later, but when was the last email you got from her? In fact, once again, the way I look at the exchanges is that she sent you an email, you sent her something back, she sent you an email, you wrote something back, and then she never responded again. It was like 2 times back and forth, and that was it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when was the last time, what was the date of the last time you heard from her?
The last email that she sent was August 16th.
Wow.
Of 2017.
Okay.
Responding to my email to her on August 7th.
All right, so it took her all that time to respond to you, like 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes.
So now we're already talking, if it is Brenda, we're already talking like 45 days after July 1st, after she moved out.
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back to the emails in a little bit just to go over at least a few of the details, but once again, we're not going to read them word for word. What finally caused you or somebody else in your family to file a missing persons report for her? What was the final, I guess, the final straw?
Well, thinking back, August 2017 was the last, time of the email. I guess After August, I had some personal issues going on, in my family at that time. So I didn't really put so much thought into it. I thought, okay, 2 more weeks, I know she'll get back with me.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I know the phone's going to ring in 2 more weeks. In my mind, I'm like, let me just give her a break. Maybe she's even going to show up here. That's what I thought. She's just tricking me. She's going to pop up. She's going to take a plane. That's what was going through my head as I'm dealing
very
with.
Common. Very common feelings. Very common in missing persons cases. Very common. Yes.
Yeah. And I double thought about it. I'm like, no, I'm just being paranoid. She's fine. She's going to show up. She's going to pop up. Going to call me. So fast forward to that. So this is August, let's say September. Then we have October. Then I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. Now we're in October. It's like the time just went by so quick.
Yeah.
I tried again to email her, and I wasn't getting a response. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. Because at that time I thought, hey, maybe I'll go out and see her. That's what it was. Yeah. Now I remember I wanted to go surprise her.
Okay.
Nothing. I didn't hear anything. I was calling her phone. I wasn't getting anything. So me and my mom were like, well, why isn't she at least calling me? I wonder what happened to her dog. Mm-hmm. She sounded, like she was going to call me or come see me.
Yeah.
So here we are a few months later. So finally in November, after just so many emails to her and no response, I filed the missing persons report.
And I should ask that, and something maybe we kind of left out, my fault, is that it very well could be one of the reasons she was thinking about moving out is that Jim was getting, I guess, maybe called back into the military to be deployed. And so she thought this was as good a time as any to take off herself?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what she told me, that he was leaving. She didn't want to stay in Alabama by herself. And that he had to go.
I kind of did not mention that. Okay, and so during those 2 months, maybe from August, that last email, until October, did you have any correspondence with Jim? Did he know that you were trying to contact Brenda and couldn't reach her? Did he know that?
Yes.
Okay, did he have any comment on that, of why that would be? Was he worried? Anything?
I just remember him, contacting me. It would take him a few days, just saying, that, he wouldn't be concerned at this point, just give it time, or, she'll come around, or I don't really know, where she is. He didn't really seem so concerned at the time that I remember. I mean, honestly, now I feel like going back on my messages and just looking for those answers that you're asking me.
Yeah. I'm just asking for your impressions of, if you did correspond with him. Of course, you're worried. Your family's worried. He's the one that was having a relationship with her. Was he concerned that you were trying to contact her? And
like I said, sometimes it felt like he was. Mm-hmm. But then other times, it'd be like, well, she'll come around, or, the only thing I can do is email her. Okay. I didn't have a lot of communication with him at that time that I remember.
Okay.
But that was, like I said, when I filed the report in November. However, then I did tell him, hey, look, I put a missing person report. I haven't heard from her. She's not responding to me. It took him a while to get back with me because he was, in a different time zone, I believe. I'll have to check back on my messages just to make sure. But from what I remember, it wasn't often that he was communicating with me.
Okay. So once you filed the missing persons report, did you file that in Huntsville, Alabama?
Yes.
Okay. And what did they do? Of course, I'm sure you told them the whole situation, that she was living in that apartment complex and it was being paid for by Jim, who was actually married to another woman. I'm sure that came up. What did the police do? Did they talk to Jim? Did they go to that complex? As far as you understand it, what did they do?
Well, when I initially, filed the report, I do remember speaking with the investigator. It seemed like at first, because she is an adult, she has the right to go missing, type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but after him talking to me and asking me questions and me telling him that my sister would never not just disappear and not call me. It might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, but it would never be, let's see, from July to November.
Okay.
I convinced him that there's something wrong.
Okay.
So he took an interest and he started asking me questions, and I told him about Jim. He wanted to know who was the last person to see her. And the last person to see her is Jim.
Yeah,
so
there the day before.
Right.
Unless there was somebody else who helped her move out, of course.
Right, which we don't know who that person is.
Okay.
But yeah, so he started asking me that. He was like, well, who was the last person to see her? So I had to tell him the whole story about Jim and, her relationship with him and, everything that he asked me, I had to answer the questions. And so, he told me that he would try to help me. He went to the Overlook Apartments. He went to the management's office. He spoke with them. He told them that he needed to go check, on this apartment, just to clarify that that she wasn't there.
Okay.
So they let him in the apartment, and I remember him telling me that, hey, look, I went, it was empty. The only thing that was left was like a desk or something. He's like, but it definitely looked like somebody, moved out. Like she's not there.
Okay.
There's nobody in that apartment.
But we have to remember this is like 4 months later, 5 months, 5 months later. Very well could be that, somebody could have gone in and just taken all of that stuff out. It is a possibility.
Right.
If somebody just walked out without leaving their stuff there, the apartment complex might have said, okay, well, I guess we're going to have to move this stuff out. Okay. But he goes in there and there's just very little in that apartment.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, he said the only thing left in there was like a desk, like I guess her desk or a piece of furniture. I recall it being a desk. It might have been a nightstand, but
okay.
I don't remember. It was one of the two. But he said there was absolutely nothing in there.
Okay. To your knowledge, could this investigator find anybody who remembered Brenda moving out?
No. He asked, as many people, I guess, as he saw.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Do you remember? And nobody seen anything. Nobody recalls a U-Haul, and nobody recalls, somebody moving out. Nobody. He couldn't get anybody to, talk to him and say, oh yeah, I knew Brenda. Oh yeah, I think I seen her move out. Anybody that he talked could not verify that they seen her.
All right. So even though, just to kind of put this in a nutshell, and this is maybe now why the listeners know we talked so much about this before, is that she allegedly moved into the Overlook Apartments in January or February. She's there 6 months, but when the police, of course, granted it was a few, 4 months after she went missing, not one person in that complex remembered her, and nobody saw her move out.
That's correct.
That's the way you understand it over 4 years later.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What else did the police do? Did they do, for example, did they do like a social security number check to see if her social security number had been used? And did they go talk to Jim? And, do you have any idea what he told them?
I know that the investigator told me that, he checked Social Security. I don't know. I would imagine he would have had to maybe look her up in the system. I know that he told me that he tried to check for her having any utilities, any warrants for her arrest, if she was arrested anywhere, things of that nature. He did tell me that he did talk to Jim, that they did have to, interview him because he is the last person to see her.
Of course.
The investigator never really went into detail with me about what they talked about.
Okay.
And I didn't know this till after probably about 6 months that he actually interviewed him twice.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe if some other information came in, from somebody and they called him back in, maybe they forgot to ask him something. I'm really not sure
Okay.
why they
Okay.
asked him again. And I don't know if it's confidentiality, but the investigator didn't really ever talk to me about what he talked about. He just basically said, we asked him the questions that we're supposed to ask him. I do know that after the second time, now that I think about this, you're getting my memory going.
That's my job.
Yeah, that Jim was upset because he felt interrogated. Like, I remember, and I could probably find the message. He was upset. He messaged me and said, I'm having them call me back in there and asking me questions about Brenda. I don't appreciate this. So my understanding, what I took from that was, maybe they upset him, or he was upset that he had to be questioned again.
Okay.
I do remember him telling me that, and I said, look, you were the last person to see her, so they're doing what they have to do.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Jim, we're not saying anything, but if you have any other people that you think the police should talk to, name them.
Right.
You're the one that was in a relationship with her. If you have any ideas of other people the police should talk to, you should tell them.
Right. Maybe that's what it was about. But like I said, now you got me thinking. The investigator really didn't share with me what they're talked about.
And that's common. That's common. I wouldn't give the person a too hard of a time, but okay. But your knowledge, they did talk to Jim. They talked to him twice. Obviously, he thought he had said enough the first time around. Right. He seemed bothered by it. He's, of course, claiming, and we're not saying he did anything, of course, but they went and talked to him twice, and he was upset about the second time. It was like, well, I already told him everything I know the first time around. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the investigator, I guess, does the best he or she can. And, of course, there's no signs that there was any foul play here. But on the other hand, we have these issues that you'd think would be fairly clear-cut about somebody moving out and things, and they aren't. All right, let's talk a little bit about Jim and some of the things that have come up. We've kind of already mentioned them, but we're going to get into them in a little more detail regarding that time right before she went missing until a couple months after she went missing. Remember, listeners remember, you said that Jim had given her a little bit of money the day before that she was moving out. Actually, how much money was it?
He had given her $5,000.
That's what he told you?
Yes.
Okay, and why that much? Any ideas?
I didn't really directly come out and say why 5,000, why not 2, why not 10?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It just sounded to me like, she was leaving and, she needed money. I don't know if that's just the number she asked him for, and he was like, okay, I'll give it to you. I know that it was cash, so it's not like he wrote a check. He claims it was cash that he gave her.
Wow. Just $5,000 in $100 bills.
Yes.
That's what he says.
Yep.
Okay, and she didn't have a checking account or a bank account, right?
No.
All right, so that's the only way she would have been able to do anything with that, unless he gave her a personal check and she could go to one of these, I don't know, payday loan places or something, but they're going to take a percentage, so she wouldn't get the whole $5,000. So he's claiming he just up and gave her $5,000. She says she's moving out, and he's more than happy to give her $5,000 to do it.
Right.
Okay. But he also told you that once Brenda moved out, that wasn't the end of him paying on this apartment, correct? Is that what he told you?
Yes.
So he kept paying even though she moved out. How many months does he say that he did that, and why did he do that? Once again, what did he say?
He told me, like after in the beginning, I don't remember what month it was, that, he was going to continue paying on the apartment. I do remember at one point him telling me that he paid it up to a year. Okay, he
Okay.
told me they paid up to a year.
Mm-hmm.
Reason being, he said he did it is just in case she wanted to come back. However, the other day I asked him again,
Yeah.
how long did how long do you have that apartment for her again? He told me he paid it up to 3 months.
3 months after her disappearance.
Right.
All right, so let's just say to October, which would still be short of a year if you are correct that she moved in there in January, February.
Right.
Okay, so there's still another 6 months, let's say. And now he's saying it was just an additional 3 months that he paid. And he actually stated he did that because in case she came back.
Right.
Okay.
That's what he said.
All right, well, is that implying that he knows where she went? And we'll get into the emails because she says something in the emails, but is he then implying that he knows where she went or what? What do you think?
I never really, he didn't say it like I know where she went. I didn't get that impression, the way that he said it. It was just kind of like, well, I left it open for her, just in case she decides to come back.
Okay.
She'll have a place to go. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to pay on it for her. Is basically how he said it.
Maybe this is exactly what he thought. He was thinking, there's no way she's going to move somewhere and be able to live on her own. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have a car. Right. She'll be back in no time. Very possible. The listeners should know. Very possible. It's no different maybe than parents who have a son or daughter wants to move out and they have no confidence that he or she's going to be able to live on his or her own, so they don't change his bedroom or anything. We're just going to keep it this. We're not going to turn it into our we're not going to father's not going to be able to turn it into his man cave just yet.
Right.
We're going to leave it here for a while in case he comes back. Okay, and that's totally I know it's a little jokey there, but just as a lighter-hearted example. So it's certainly possible. In fact, I would have to say when I moved out of my parents' house in 1998, they probably thought I would come back too. All right, so he kept paying for a few months. Obviously, Brenda did not come back, and of course, he gave her $5,000. I mean, that would seem that she would maybe be able to live on her own with that amount of money for longer than that. But okay. All right, let's talk a little bit more about this email address, just the address itself. You had never seen this email address before. Has Jim ever explained where he got this email address of bsica99@gmail.com, being that you had never seen it before, nobody else had seen it before? Did you ever say to him, I've never seen this email address before. Where did he get it?
No, I never questioned it. And I just figured maybe they could, I guess at the time, maybe I was thinking that's how they communicated, just so the wife didn't, maybe they couldn't communicate, excuse me, in the beginning through the phone. Maybe, this was just her email address. Okay. But I never knew she had it. But no, actually, it's a good point, and I never thought to bring it up to him.
All right, because the way I understand it is that, of course, you're saying you can't reach her, and then somehow he's able to reach her, and I guess being that she responded at that email, that must have been the way he emailed her. He had that address.
Right.
I guess. Yes. Now, what's interesting, the listeners should know that I've done a search for bsica99@gmail.com. It comes up nowhere. I'm not saying it's not a real Google email address. It is, but with some of the databases we use for the program, I've been able to find many email addresses that are connected to Brenda Sica over many years, but this is not one of them. I don't know who. It very well could be Brenda. There could be a quirk in the system. A lot of different possibilities that are not suspicious at all. But I just want everybody to know that I tried to find all of Brenda Sica's email addresses, and I found several. This was not one of them. So, and I couldn't even find out how long it had existed, who even started it. I was unable to do that so far to the time of this interview, which is September 3rd, 2021. So maybe this was like a secret email address, for correspondence between the two of them. Maybe that was it. Okay. And I'm sure his listeners are going to look that up for themselves. Let's talk a little bit about her phone. Did she have a cell phone? Was it pinged? Do we have any records regarding it?
She had a cell phone. It was a prepaid phone. I do remember really trying to drill the investigator really hard on getting records or trying to, find out, maybe go to the phone company. I mean, demand, get a subpoena for her phone records.
Yeah.
My understanding from that was that since it was a prepaid phone, there was no way to trace anything on her phone.
It's mostly true. I can't argue with that. But I think what I want to ask you about this, just to be very clear, is that people can have like what we would call regular, like I have what do I have now? I have an LG phone now. Of course, a lot of people have iPhones and Samsungs and everything else. And you can have those very, common phones and still have a plan where you pay as you go. It's not a regular plan like T-Mobile or something. So there is a difference between that kind of situation and maybe the other situation where it is the phone is actually connected to the plan. So what kind of phone did she have? Did she have an Android phone, an iPhone, or was it one of these, what we used to call back in the day, one of these track phones? What?
I believe it was probably one of the track phones.
Mm-hmm. So you couldn't download apps to it and all of those things, or what do you think? I mean, she FaceTimed with it.
Yeah, she FaceTimed with it, and I'm not 100% sure. I know it wasn't an iPhone. It might have been an Android, but I know that everything was prepaid. Like she, she would run out of time. It would say this customer cannot be reached. She was always putting money on the phone.
Okay.
But I don't know. I know it wasn't an iPhone. I know she had FaceTime, and I guess she must have had her Facebook on there. So I'm thinking it was an Android phone.
Okay. All right, and that occurs with something, but I don't want to talk about it in this interview right now because that would be a private conversation. Okay, so really, when it comes to phone information, not helpful. Not even a ping in Huntsville, Alabama, or anywhere else.
Well, actually, the investigator said that the last place that he can ping the phone to was Alabama.
Okay. All right. Well, at least he did that. Did he say where in Alabama?
I don't really remember.
Okay.
Where?
Okay, that might be something you maybe want to ask him if he's willing to tell you. That is, Alabama's a big state. It'd maybe be interesting to know if it pinged in Alabama. Was it in Huntsville or was it in the city where Jim lived?
Yeah, I want to say, I don't know. I want to say I remember it being maybe somewhere local where she was. I'm not 100% sure. Because I would think if it was pinned at an area where she, on the other side of Alabama, I think maybe that would have caught his eye.
Right.
But then again, I'm not sure. This is a question I guess I'll have to go back.
All right.
I'm just taking his word for it. I looked, he didn't really tell me anything except that, it was around where she was. So maybe it was Huntsville, maybe it was back at the bar she worked at. I'm gonna have to ask him on that.
Okay, I think it would be nice to be able to narrow that down a little bit more. And of course, being that this disappearance is just over 4 years old, it's still very possible. Okay, to get phone records, if you could get them, I know even for me, a few years ago, I had to go back and get, for some reason, I can't remember now, I have T-Mobile. I had to go back to like 2012 or something. For some reason, I wanted to take a look at some phone records from years ago of mine, and I was able to get them. You have to do some special stuff to get them, but you can get them. So, being that this disappearance is just over 4 years old, if those records still exist, pings and things like that, they might still be able to be accessed, even though I understand the pay-as-you-go issue is going to be a problem. Okay. Let's get more into these emails. Once again, we're not going to read them word for word. But she mentions Wyoming. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, that kind of came as a shock to me as well. And, in the previous email, I was just, asking her, hey, where are you? I did say Montana, I believe. It says it there. You're in Montana, Alaska. Like, where the hell are you? And then she came back and she said, I'm in Wyoming. I guess I was surprised in the aspect because I just didn't think she would go that far.
Mm-hmm.
Because now in my head I'm like, wait a minute, how did you get there? Did you drive? I thought all the same things. Where's your stuff? Who drove you? That's a long ways.
Right.
And then on the other side, since Brenda, when she was in the Air Force, was stationed in Montana, I didn't think it was out of her character if she wanted to move somewhere. I could see her living out, in the Midwest, in the country, or like a more quiet, smaller town. I was a little surprised, though, when she said that.
All right. We have to remember, we're not sure if Brenda wrote those emails or not. We just have to remember, this is very common. We've run into other situations with other disappearances, people pretending to be the missing person using that person's email account. I wouldn't say it's common, but it's enough that it, gives me pause every time something like this happens. We just have to remember these were all emails. You never did talk to her after July 1st, 2017. You never heard her voice, which would be proof that she was still alive if you could have a conversation with her. It was just these emails. But she does mention Wyoming. I checked into that. There's no record of a Brenda Sica ever living in Wyoming or anywhere else for that matter after July of 2017. Just so the listeners know, but that was one of the things that was contained in the email. She also talked about her dog, and in fact, your mother, what did your mother do regarding Brenda talked about how her dog had cancer. What did your mother do?
Well, because, in one of the emails, Brenda had mentioned that she was in town taking her dog to the vet. Now, we know that her dog was sick, prior to her, when she went missing. My mom, then I had the idea, maybe we can call around to the vets and ask them if Brenda has been in there with the dog. Because this way we can get an idea of maybe where in Wyoming she's at.
Right.
Or where, the surrounding area. So my mom, she got on the internet and she looked up, she honestly called over 150 vets from the border between Montana and Wyoming.
Yeah.
And every phone call she made told them the story, as quickly as she could.
Yeah.
Everybody, no, there's nobody came in with that name. We're sorry. We hope you can find your daughter. Then we thought, okay, well, maybe she went under a different name. So then we had them check her dog's name and her name, just to be sure. And no vet out of over the 150 vets that she's called said that there was anybody that came in with that name and her dog.
Would you, what kind of dog did she have?
It was a mixed dog. I'm not sure what, what type of dog it was. Her dog's name was Bowie. It was a little black dog with a little white face. He had like white patches. She loved that dog more than anything.
Okay.
That was her everything.
I have to admit, I wouldn't have even guessed that there were at least even 100 veterinarians in Wyoming, but your mother called all of them.
Yes, she did. She absolutely did. She called, like I said, from the border, Montana, all the way into Wyoming.
All the way down to Colorado.
Yeah, she called and she did. She spent all day doing that. She would, spend from the morning.
It's a great idea. Very, very creative to try that. Obviously, it didn't work, but that is that's a good way to go about this, though. If somebody's gonna mention something in an email like that, then I think it's something, it's a path of inquiry. Okay, so nothing there. I know I already asked you if these emails sound like Brenda, and you were kind of like 50-50. Some things sound like her, some things don't. But I will just bring out up one particular part. She called you, or I think Sissy, Sissy. I'm guessing that's short for sister. Is that was that a common reference between you and her? Something that she would
Yes.
say?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how she would refer to me, to Jim, to her friends, people she would introduce me to, or if I would call her. So yes, she would refer to me as Sissy.
Okay,
yes.
But I guess what you're also saying is other people would have known that?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. So it could be that somebody who knew that she called you that then could pretend to be her and use that. In contrast to this just being a secret nickname between the two of you, sometimes that's sisters and brothers. I have two brothers and a sister. I know a little bit about that. You might call each other by names that, I don't mean necessarily swear names, but names that maybe not used in public.
Right.
Sometimes. But your impression is that other people would have known this?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now let's move on to this, and this is maybe even where this disappearance gets even a little more complex, is that we're going to talk a little bit more. Of course, Brenda is the topic of this whole episode, but maybe a couple things about her that are particular to her, but I have it right there in the outline. I had it in my notes that she has experience, though, changing her name. Why don't you explain that?
Yeah. Brenda changed her name. Her name was Brenda Seymour. I'll just tell you real quickly. Seymour, that name never really had a meaning to her. It was my mom's first husband. That was his last name. So when my mom adopted her, and she met somebody and they got married, that's where Seymour came in. So my mom actually, he ended up not being a very nice man, and my mom left him when we were younger. And my sister always hated that name. So in 2001, she decided that, she didn't want that name anymore. So she changed her name to Sica, which is our mom's maiden name.
So you officially did it, went to the courthouse or whatever you have to do.
Yes.
And just like famous people change their names and get it legally changed, like Gordon Sumner became Sting, something like that.
Yes, it was a legal name change.
Okay. So she does, and of course we're already talking about this in disappearances, people changing their identities, people changing their names. What are the odds that somebody really did leave his or her life and change their name? Brenda already had experience in her adult life doing this.
Right.
All right, so conceivably, we don't theorize too much, but I guess this leaves open to the idea that, yeah, she really did move out and changed her name again.
Right.
It could be possible. And
yes.
Especially since she has experience doing this before. Okay. So Brenda Sica could be someone else now, and if she could change her last name, maybe she could change her first name. Okay. We just have to be open to that, even though maybe some of the things we've talked about could point us in a different direction. We know that Jim got talked to. To your knowledge, did the investigator speak to any other men who could have been in Brenda's life? For example, she had this ex-husband, maybe guys that would go to one of the bars that she used to work at before she quit her jobs. Anybody else who maybe could have helped her move out? Do you know anything about any of that?
No, I don't believe that he talked to anybody. The only person that, he was interested in talking to was Jim. I've asked him, to talk to certain people that I thought maybe had information, but that's just not what he does. He's willing to talk to anybody that will call him, but he's not going to he's not going to just start calling people. Right. To him, it was just, like I said, she's an adult. Yeah. She disappeared on her own. There's really not much that I can do unless you give me details of, somebody that might know where she is, if she's, in any danger. The only person that they interviewed was Jim.
Okay. Now, this is not in the outline. I forgot to put it in here, but I know that you know this topic very well because we did talk about it in a prior conversation. Another thing that complicates all of this, if she did rent a U-Haul and did move her stuff out, did Brenda have a driver's license?
Yes.
She did? Do you think it was current? She didn't have a car.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I know she's had one in the past, but it very well could have expired.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because I'm thinking, do you think that being that she's from Florida, do you think that she would have a Florida driver's license? When she had one, do you think it was from Florida?
Yes.
Okay, because they expire every 10 years. You have to go in in fact, I just had to do mine recently. I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary here. So unless she did that, it would have expired at some point. And being, when was the last time, once again, the way you remember, when was the last time she owned a car?
It's funny because my husband just asked me this the other night, because when Brenda left to go to Alabama, he goes, well, how do you think she got there? She had a car. And I don't remember where she got the car from. You know what I mean? I can't remember that. Maybe that's something that I should ask my mom. I know, I don't remember what car it was, but now that I said you got my memory working, something happened to the car when she got there. I think it broke down. I don't know if she sold it, but, my husband pointed out to me the other day, he goes, how do you think she got to Alabama? Because I'm like, I wasn't thinking, I guess I just didn't put much thought into it. But yeah, she had a car. I don't remember who she got it from. And like I said, I think it broke down when she got up there, and I think she might have sold it.
Right.
But after that, I know that she didn't have her own car.
Okay. Just to remind everybody, when did she move from Florida to Alabama? Approximately the year.
It was 2011.
All right. So she had a car 6 years before she went missing, and something happened to it. Okay. So, and as I explained to you, the way I look at these things, listeners, is that my experience tells me that having worked in the car business way back in the 1990s, is that when people don't have cars, the odds of them re-upping their driver's license and everything goes down quite a bit because they never use it. So it very well could be that if her license expired sometime between 2011 and 2017, there is at least a chance that she did not renew it, in Alabama to get an Alabama driver's license. So, and that would be something that the investigator would be able to research, by the way, if you wanted to bring that up with him.
Right.
So that might complicate the idea of her actually renting a U-Haul to move with all of her stuff, because you can't rent anything without a driver's license. You can't do it.
Right.
So,
or a credit card.
Yeah, or a credit card, right. Well, if she had cash, maybe they'll take cash, or a cashier's check. You could get go to a 7-Eleven and get a money order made or something. They'll take that. But the driver's license is an absolute imperative. They're not going to, rent to somebody who doesn't even have a driver's license. That's disaster. Okay. Now, here's where I suppose I'm going to talk a little bit. You can take a break for a couple moments here, Carrie, is that I've been working on this very diligently, Brenda's disappearance, for a few weeks now. And there's a weird fact that I discovered, and I'm fully open to the idea that, there could be a quirk in the databases that we use, and I'm always open to that. These databases are not 100%. I know that. In fact, they're probably not even 99%. They're more like 95 or 92, 90%. But I looked up the address, as we talked about very early in this conversation, for 1500 Sparkman Northwest Road in Huntsville, Alabama, in the Overlook apartment complex, apartment 26E. And I was able to find residents in that apartment going way back to like the early 90s, if not the 1980s. And you can see these people. this person lived there from this year to this year, you can almost fill in the entire timeline of like 25 years of, people who have lived in that complex, almost back to back to back to back to back to back. There is no record that Brenda Sica ever lived in that apartment complex. That is true. Once again, I am open to the idea that there's just something weird going on there and it's completely harmless. But I could find nothing connecting Brenda Sica to that apartment complex. In addition, I could not find anything connecting Jim with his last name to that particular apartment either. So you might understand, well, she's not paying the rent. Her name's not on the lease. He bought that for on and on and on. But his name isn't connected to that address at all. In fact, I could not find an address at all to connect Jim to any address in Huntsville, Alabama at all. So this is something that I've passed on to Carrie. This is why early in the conversation we can now reveal that it's very important to understand that she said she was living in that apartment complex. She FaceTimed with Carrie on that. But still, nobody we trust, or Carrie trusts, ever went there and actually went into her apartment to see that she actually lived there. And then you add on top of the fact there's no record of her ever living in there. It's a big question mark. It's really weird. And I should say that it seems, once again, to the records that I could find, that anybody living in that apartment complex ended in about 2015. So I've not been able to find anybody who lived in that apartment complex after Brenda lived in it either, from like 2018, 2019, 2020. It's weird. I'd have no explanation for it even after 5 years of doing stuff like this. So, and Carrie knows all of this. This is just something I think we'll have to continue to keep an eye on. And of course, you still are in contact with Jim, correct, Carrie?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Yeah, and have you had a chance to ask him or tell him about that yet? And has he responded to that?
No, I haven't had a chance to.
Okay.
I've asked him.
Yeah.
This was the Overlook Apartments.
Right.
And he said yes. He didn't really give me much detail.
Okay.
He, sometimes would ignore my messages, get back with me a couple days, short answer me.
Right.
But, he did say that's where the apartment was.
Okay. So just to go through that all again for the listeners, we have no record of, at least we've been able to find in any public database that is accessible on the internet, to show that Brenda is connected to 26E or Jim is connected to 26E. In addition, we can find no one, it seems the investigators or anybody else is able to find anybody who remembers Brenda being in that apartment complex. We also don't know who could have helped her move out of that apartment complex because it was empty. Somebody moved that stuff out with her. So it does make you wonder. Any one of those things maybe is a little, maybe can be explained away, but you put it all together and you just got to start wondering, what exactly was going on there. But I'll leave that up to the listeners. Once again, the listeners will theorize about that themselves. I'm sure they're probably going to look it up just to see that I'm telling the truth, too, as far as 26E. And yes, it is true, Carrie, you still have a contact with Jim to this day.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I think that's good. We're not saying Jim had anything to do with this. It just seems like there's a lot of stuff that should be known that isn't known. And, it would be nice, for example, if we could have found some records. Oh, yeah, she did live in there, for the 6 months. Nothing. Now, here's the big question. We have to remember that what Brenda told you, she said that Jim was going to be leaving his wife. Is he still married to his wife?
Yes, he is.
All right. Maybe even a bigger question. Does he now have another mistress?
Yes, he does.
Okay. And you've talked to her. I've seen those messages. We're not going to say what her name is, but do you have any idea when this new woman came into Jim's life? You've spoken to her. What does she say? What does she say, if you can say, about Brenda? Did she know that when she first met Jim that a former girlfriend disappeared that he had been dating. Did she know that? What has she said? And please do not mention her name.
She told me that they got together in 2018. All that time, she did mention to me that he never mentioned Brenda's disappearance until probably maybe 6 months or 5 months after she disappeared. Like, he didn't tell her anything right away.
Okay, but they didn't meet till 2018. So you're saying they knew each other for 6 months before he brought that up?
Right. They were dating 6 months.
Okay.
Right.
All right. And yes, you have correspondence with this woman as well. And once again, we're not even going to mention her first name. And frankly, she's told you a lot. I'm not sure personally how much I am personally myself am supposed to believe, but it sounds in a way she's trying to be helpful. But we also have to remember it seems that she and Jim still have something that's on again, off again.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. How has this affected your family, Carrie? Obviously, once again, you have your own life. Of course, you have other family members. They have their own lives. But the last 4+ years, how has it been?
Well, I mean, it's been especially hard. I would say anybody taking it the hardest would be me, because, me and Brenda always had, a connection. Maybe it's because we're just the only blood in the family. It's been really hard. It's been really hard on my mom. She had heart failure back in 2018, just from stress and just different things. And, ever since then, I kind of just took the role that I'm going to take over, trying to find Brenda. It's just put like a damper. It's just very agonizing and heartbreaking, and she's just a piece of our family is missing.
Yeah.
And we talk about it a lot. Sometimes, my brother won't talk about it, or my dad. But my mom is, she's not taking it very well. She has her days, and it's just a big mystery. It's not getting answers. It's not knowing if she's alive. It's not knowing what happened. It's just, a roller coaster of emotions and mystery, and, just no answers. I mean, what do you do?
Yeah.
You have to move on. You have to live your life, but at the same time, we don't forget about her. I'm always trying to find her. I'm always trying to, talk to people or get her name out there as much as I can. But it's just, we don't know. We don't know what happened.
All right. I realize, Carrie, that we forgot to mention maybe one more thing about those emails, one other point that was contained in them. And that is, in one of those emails, she said that she had met a new guy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she did.
All right. So, and once again, in reading it, and of course, the listeners by this time will have had a chance to read it themselves, it does give the impression that they moved to Wyoming, if that's where she really is, together. She calls him my new old man. And being that it was so quick, you'd almost have to believe that it's some guy from Alabama.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I tried to go on her Facebook and look at every single person that she, was friends with or talked to, and I can't find anybody that lived in Wyoming or in the surrounding area that she was communicating with.
Okay. So once again, it's a big question mark. Did she make that up? Is it really her? Is that the truth? Did she decide, yeah, I'm going to change my name? I think there's a lot of different, choices here. And maybe the emails is as good as they are to show that she was seemingly around, almost 2 months after the disappearance date. There are reasons, of course, on the other hand, to think maybe she didn't write them, and they're very, very nebulous. Okay. Carrie, do you have a Facebook page? Anything else set up for Brenda and her disappearance?
Yes, I do. I have a page. It's called Find Brenda Sica.
Okay.
That was put together for me through the Cold Case Foundation.
Okay.
I have somebody working with me on that, and they kind of gave me the idea. They actually, the gentleman's assistant was the one who put the page together.
Great.
For her, I have her on, different states missing, people of Alabama, Wyoming, help we find the missing, just organizations that, try to assist with missing persons.
Okay. Well, I will make sure that I link to that, and so everybody can check it out and share and like it, so they can keep tabs on what you are doing. And we have to just remember that at least in Unfound's world, this is a fairly new disappearance. I mean, the average age of a disappearance we cover on the program is 18 years old. So 4 years old is young in our world, but still it gets all the attention just as much as any other one does. And with these newer disappearances, it does seem that more things do happen. Things happen more than disappearance that, for example, is 30 years old. So that's what I'm hoping in Brenda's. And, I want to continue to help you in any way that I can. The apartment address is still a huge question. In fact, I don't mind telling you, as you go forward, Carrie, that's probably something you should really concentrate on. Have to get a better handle on what exactly was going on there. Whether it's from Jim, go to the apartment complex yourself, call them up, if they can send you some paperwork, if that's not too intrusive. Certainly like to know a little bit more about that. That's my suggestion.
Okay.
But any final words before we complete this interview?
No, I think we pretty much covered, everything that I know, or any information that I could give you. I'll definitely try to look into maybe contacting the apartment complex myself. I don't know if, maybe the management there has changed. It has been 4 years.
Sure.
Maybe I'll have to take a trip out there, and hopefully, maybe somebody can look more into it. I don't know how far the investigator,
Yeah. Well, you should pass. You should pass that along at least. Once again, there may be some quirk in the databases that I use. Certainly possible, but the investigator should at least know, about that. Let's not just take for granted that she lived there. Let's find some paperwork or something else to really, really prove it. And we may be taking something for granted that's not true. I think that's what I'm saying.
I'll definitely. When I speak with him, I'll actually let him know that there's, his name was never in any of the,
the databases that we would usually,
right, that there's, nothing that shows that he even had it in his name.
No, there's not. None.
I'll definitely bring that up to him.
Okay.
I used to talk to him, or I email him once a week. I have to say, it's been 4 years, and he actually followed any little lead that I thought I had, or any idea that I have. He's always responded back to me. He's called me a couple times. I definitely think that he knows that I'm not going to give up.
Yeah, good.
And that, he probably sees my name and is like, okay, it's her again. But
well, good.
I don't know if she's on the bottom of his files, but I do know that he always responds back to me, and he tells me the same thing, that, what he told me is that he's worked, missing persons cases. He goes, but your sister's is different. He's like, there's absolutely no trace. He's like, usually, I can find somebody by a cell phone, a homeless shelter, a relative. He goes, it boggles my mind that I cannot even find anything on her. He's told me that he subpoenaed Facebook to get her records and her messages, and he's went over thousands and thousands of pages, even on his days off, just trying to get a clue, and he just can't find anything, which he finds a little bit odd, he said, because of all her, contact on social media and her friends on there, that there's just nothing that he can pull from that.
That's very common. The main issue is not the investigator. The issue is that these types of disappearances are rare. Most people who go missing are found fairly quickly. Some of them are deceased. A lot of them just come back by themselves. Is the common thing I say is they went to Vegas for a couple of days and didn't tell anybody. And so then something like Brenda's happens, and it's, she's going to come back. And then it's 2 days, and like you said, before you knew it, it was October.
Right.
And still, she's gone, nobody's heard from her and everything, and this is when things get very, very difficult, because most police departments, most investigators, they will work their entire careers and never come up with a disappearance case that lasts longer than a week. Then what happens? Then you have one like Brenda's, and it's a little hard to figure out what to do because they've never experienced it before. So this is something that I'm working on. This is the reason I have some plans to go speak to some colleges, to criminal justice majors about this and how we can change this. People who are going to be investigators somewhere down the road, what do they need to know? Because there's going to be no learning curve. It's going to be, a bunch of reports, missing persons reports that are going to be solved in a week are going to be on your desk for 15 years, and all of a sudden one's going to be on your desk and it's 6 months old. What are you going to do?
Right.
And this is what I'm trying to change. But I think what you just said there, common in just about any disappearance we've covered. The little people are a little flummoxed. Well, I did all the things I usually do that usually work, and now I don't know what to do because none of that stuff worked. Well, it's then time to find new things that are going to work. And if he's looked through all the paperwork from Facebook and everything, maybe some paperwork at the apartment complex, won't cost him more than 10 minutes of his time.
Right.
But I still say that, I think we gotta start there. I know I've said that for the fifth time.
No, I agree with you, but I didn't really think about it, until you, have my memory, excuse me, working now. And now I'm thinking, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I go? Why didn't I?
That's why I'm here. Don't beat yourself up too much. Most guests are like this. They've done a lot of great things, but sometimes even myself, we take certain facts for granted. Well, she had to have lived in that apartment complex. Surely I don't need to check that. It's very common.
Right.
But then, then you're getting to 4 years, and maybe there's not as many things to do, and maybe you start looking at things a little more deeply, and then something maybe you took for granted doesn't maybe seem as true, and then that opens up a new line of research. It may end up be that she absolutely was there, and that there is paperwork, and it's just not on the internet. And, you'll go there, and Jim's signature will be there, and her signature will be there, and it very well could be. There's just none of that right now that we know about.
Right.
But like I said, it's just not one thing. It's that, the database, absence, nobody remembering her at the apartment complex, nobody seeing her move out. Jim can't tell you who could have helped her move out, on and on and on. Maybe she couldn't have rented a U-Haul. She might not have had a driver's license. Where did all this stuff go? So
exactly.
it's just not one of those things. It's all of them put together.
Right.
So,
exactly. It's a big mystery.
Right. But and I'll continue to counsel you as best I can. If there's things that I think I need to look up, following the episode coming out, I will surely do that for you. Okay, so this is just the beginning of us knowing each other, Carrie.
I really appreciate it. I really do. You're wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. You're very kind. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate everything that you do, not just for my case, but everybody else. That there are people, out there that really care about, people that are missing, and it's just, I need an answer if she's, no longer with us. We need closure. I just have to know, and I won't give up until I find her.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I really do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that was my September 4th, 2021 interview with Carrie Valle, sister of Brenda Sica. I thank her for joining me and all of you on the program. As I mentioned during the interview, and with Carrie's permission, I've posted the contents of the emails that came from the bsica99@gmail.com address on Facebook and on the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. Once again, the address is bsica99@gmail.com, so that you may judge the messages for yourselves. Now that you've heard the interview, you know why I gave this episode the title I did. In fact, in listening to my talk with Carrie, I'm wondering if I might have beaten the topic of where Brenda was living into the ground. So I'm going to stay away from that in this summation. Yet, in discussing where Brenda lived, I did get to talk about my own personal use of databases, something I'm not sure has come up too much on any episode. Although I think I have written about the topic in some of the Patreon blogs, and I've mentioned databases during the YouTube live show. Here are some of the main ones I use. However, it's not uncommon for me to go to 5, 6, or 7 different ones in hopes of finding additional trustworthy information. ussearch.com, whitepages.com, peoplelooker.com. Those are pretty much the main 3. Are there better ones? If you think so, please email me your favorites. What I would say about using any databases you can find is this. Number 1, just doing a search for myself, and that is really the best way to test any database, I will find many errors. So remember, there are probably mistakes in any information you may find. Number 2, the best way to cut down on collecting erroneous data from any of these lists is to cross-reference between several different sites, going back and forth, back and forth. And number 3, using a database is much an art as a science. It could take a person quite a while to get the feel of how the list has been compiled and how it can best be used. There is certainly a learning curve. So, how does this apply to Brenda's disappearance? Her lifestyle was not one in which she would have left a large data footprint. No bank account, maybe no driver's license, no job, at least at the time of her disappearance. If she was living in 26E, then it certainly wasn't in her name since Jim was paying. However, his name isn't attached to that address either. Brenda had experience changing her last name. Maybe most importantly, given how Carrie described her, Brenda seemed like the type who could make the decision to live off the grid. All very valid points. Yet, what those items would not explain is, why did Brenda seem to want to continue emailing with Carrie, but then stopped? Why was Brenda's mother unsuccessful in calling dozens of veterinarians in Wyoming who might have known Brenda or her dog? How Brenda could just happen to meet a guy, as she stated in an email, who would allow her to masquerade as if she is missing when she really isn't. Why nobody in the complex remembered Brenda moving in or out, despite her having stuff with her. So, I just don't know. But I'm hoping all of you will research this for yourself, from your trailers, houses, and apartments. I'll leave the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Dentzel, and you've been listening to Unfound.